now, but again, you did all really fabulous. And I'm happy to share with you my comments. And then later on you will receive, I think, the results from Fang Fang. So today's just about comments about your individual playing, which I've enjoyed very much. So if it's okay with you, Fang Fang, we'll start with the first contestant, and that is Max. Max Long, if you're around, make yourself known and turn on your camera.
The Max, if you're in the room, please you raise your hand. Max Long，如果你在这个 Zoom meeting 的话，请你打开你的，请你就是举一个手，因为我没有看到你。Max in here, please raise your hand. Okay, I think Professor can keep to talking.
Good. Okay, so since you're recording, Max, eventually you're going to get this recording, and so here are my comments. There are many excellent things about your playing. First of all, it's very organized, and it's also wonderful that you have good posture. So the violin has good posture, the bow hand, in general both hands and the arms. So, and I wrote this in the comments to you too, so I hope you get the written comments too. The Bach G minor is calm and very steady. Here's the thing. My question is if this music, this adagio, is really calm, or could there be some sort of excitement, an element of excitement, even though it is an adagio? So rather than playing everything, very calmly, it is rhythm. It's harmonically so incredibly rich. I think there's a lot of excitement in just the tension of the harmonies. So you could show also some of the quicker notes being quicker, and then so that you see the tension, lots of dissonances, right? So there's a lot of ornamentation in this music that makes the music actually not calm, and so that's one way you might want to think about this music. But he played it very steadily and actually very beautifully. So good job for that. In the Mendelssohn, for me, the opening, I guess, showed a little bit that you had a certain amount of tension there, and I think it could be more ethereal. This opening is so unique in a way. It's all on the E string. Filigree, think elegance and really high up in the stratosphere. So a little bit more of that rather than really tense. Then what else did I write? Right, so this first movement is, it's a tour de force, not just in technique, but actually in expression. And I think for me, many of the phrases kind of had the same type of expression and could be, in a way, more different, more, maybe each of them more unique in its own way. So some passages are, of course, very relaxed. Others are more excited. There's tenderness. There can be more dreaminess. Very dreamy. That sort of thing. So I think a lot of it has to do with character. but you as a musician, as a violinist, very, very good job. And there you are. I finally see you. Sorry, I had so many little windows open that only now I see you. Did you get most of the comments that I just said? Great. Okay, thumbs up. Excellent. So good job and very nice to meet you, Max. Take care. Good. So next would be Jerry Dye. And if you're here, you can also turn on your microphone and your camera. Jerry.
Jerry in here.
Great. Is your microphone on?
Yes, nice to meet you.
Great, nice to meet you too. Okay, so my comments to you are, first of all, you learned your pieces really well. That's good, excellent. Now, when you play, you don't move enough for me. I think you can be a little freer with your body, but that means your feet have to be a little bit wider. When your feet are wider, you know, it's a lot like in a sport. If you stand right, if you have a good stance, then you can move properly. So imagine a tennis player, he cannot play tennis if the feet are close together, right? You have to have a relatively wide stance, because then moving, and you know, playing the violin is a lot like tennis too. Do you play any sports?
Yeah, I think badminton's pretty similar too.
Okay, right, exactly. So probably when you're standing right to the ball or the shuttle, then things are going to go well. So a lot of it has to do with standing and how you move. So definitely that's I think that's going to be the main thing about your playing, that when you start moving a little bit, it also shapes the music a little bit. When you don't move at all, before you know, everything kind of sounds the same. So now about the pieces, in the Monty, I definitely think, you know, this is a showpiece, and it's supposed to be kind of a Hungarian gypsy piece, and that kind of style lives from being very, very free. So having a lot of rubato is probably the first thing. So rather than every note having the same tempo, you can be much freer than that. Then take time. You know, it's about playing with your audience a little bit. So the audience should be at the edge of their seat and wondering, what is he going to do next? So when you play kind of stoically and everything too regular, then that sense of wonder is a little bit gone. So more rubato. And then I wrote double stops. I guess the double stops got a bit rough. So just because you're playing on two strings at the same time doesn't mean the bow strokes should get more intense or rougher. It's really just a matter of adjusting the angle. So whether it's this or it's the same sound quality. See, just because I'm adding another string, I'm not suddenly starting to squeeze a lot. So that's definitely something you can consider for your double stops. Okay. And then just one more thing. Oh yeah, flexible wrist. Very, very important that this wrist moves a little bit. Okay, so I think it tends to be kind of a little still, a little stiff. You want to put a drop of WD-40, if you know what that is. It's kind of an oil that you spray in the hinges when there's a creaky door somewhere. Imagine you take a little WD-40 and you spray it in your wrist, and then things move again. Good. And that will help with détaché, with, you know, fast down, up, down, up, down, up, and then your bow is also straighter. If your wrist doesn't move, then your bow gets a little crooked. All right? And a compliment for your triplets in the Vivaldi. It was really great that you didn't slow down for those, you know that passage? That was fantastic. You played that with really great tempo. That was fantastic. Okay, good job. And nice to meet you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next we have Jia Yi Wu, if you're around. Good, if you can turn on your camera and your sound.
Hi.
There you are. You seem to be outside, or you're in a car.
I'm in my car, yeah.
In your car, that's good. Okay, technology makes it possible. That's great. Okay, so I have a couple of suggestions for you. The first one is that you should develop your vibrato. Okay, so vibrato is now becoming very important because the repertoire is already kind of up there. You know, you're playing Beethoven and Road Caprices, so it's a pretty advanced repertoire, and I think your vibrato needs to kind of get to that sort of level. So see if you can maybe work with your teacher on vibrato exercises to get that arm really going. Or do you have an arm vibrato or a hand vibrato? Do you know?
I think hand.
You think hand. Okay, because it's been a few days since I watched your videos, but so if you do hand vibrato, you know, you put your hand in fifth position and you make this sort of motion that goes back, and you just bend and stretch, or you bend in your wrist, waving back. And then you can do it, you know, maybe 3 per bow. And then maybe you do 4 per bow. And then you do 6 per bow. You see where it takes you. Then you do 8 per bow, and then 12 per bow, and eventually you have. So you can also do it with metronome and just count your way up to about 16 per bow. And there's your vibrato. So definitely develop that. That's now, I think, the most important thing for you. Now, the other thing is the looseness of your bow hand. So we have many joints in our arm, right? Starting with the shoulder joint, elbow, wrist, and then the knuckle joints and all those little joints. So everything should work all the time. I think you're a little tight with all those joints. Because when you use all your joints, the music is more polished, and it's more noble in a way. I see. So that's the other thing. So one thing for left hand vibrato, and for the bow hand is definitely to get those fingers nice and loose. And then I wrote that even in the road, although it's all short notes, you can vibrate some of those notes, and again the sound will be more polished. So you want to have a nice energy in the stroke. So you can vibrate even tiny little eighth notes. You don't have to vibrate all of them, but how about none of them? Good. Does that sound good to you?
Yep.
Can you work with that? Okay, that's good. Great. So very nice to meet you, and take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Good. So next we have Jessica Hua. And there you are.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And very nice to meet you. Now, I have to make you a huge compliment for your Frank, which I think you play absolutely beautifully. And tell me how old you are.
For 15.
15. Okay. So, it's actually kind of rare that somebody at your age really gets this music in all the refinement and nobility that it has, and you absolutely got it. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really superb. I was so happy just listening to it. So I wrote in the comment, it's very loose and it's free, and you have a really good technique, and the style comes out really well. It's romantic, which is what it should be. By the way, sometimes people play Frank as if it was impressionist music. You know the term impressionism, I assume. Right, so just so we're clear, this is not impressionist music. Impressionism comes much later in France. Debussy, Ravel, so actually kind of already almost 20th century. But Frank is truly romantic music, and you really had that romanticism, which is wonderful. The one comment that I might suggest as a improvement is that your upper dynamics, it's a forte, it's maybe mostly almost a mezzo forte. I think your upper dynamic could be stronger. So then you're opening up everything towards the top. I mean, keep all your refinement, your pianissimos, your pianos, your mezzo pianos are beautiful. They're very beautifully staggered. And then when we get to the upper dynamics, there's kind of a limit to what it is. And if you can raise the limit of your louder sounds, then I think you have everything. So for example, in the first two phrases, and I have the music somewhere on my tiny laptop screen. So yeah, so it starts forte. You played the third and fourth movement, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that chord, most people don't hold it long enough. So hold it long enough, as long as you can, and really with a big sound, And see how much you can really get out of that one bow stroke. So try not to be pleased with whatever comes out is good enough, but work a little bit on getting it stronger and stronger. So what you might need to do is really lower your arm for a lot of heavy weight. Second phrase, same thing. And the diminuendo, that was my dog who was shaking himself. The diminuendo hasn't started yet, so full sound, So you can actually then do diminuendos that are much more, in a way, breathtaking if you start with a bigger sound. Okay, and that is mostly it. Now, I would recommend that you reconsider your bow hold a little bit. I don't know if you've ever thought about it or if you've heard of it before. Maybe I'm saying it because this music is, of course, written by a Belgian composer, and we have in the violin world, we have the three main schools of violin playing, which is the Russian school and the German school and the Franco-Belgian violin school. And there happens to be a Franco-Belgian bow hold, which is having the fingers, very round and the middle and ring finger kind of curved over the stick. And then everything is loose and elastic. Now you, if I remember correctly, have a little bit of a Russian bow hold, which is fingers are less flexible. And what comes with that is that when you're at the frog, the power is gone a little bit. Because with the Russian bow hold, it's all about the power at the tip. You see? So if you take Heifetz and watch some of his videos, he of course is probably the most famous Russian bowhole person. And whenever he went to the frog, he immediately went away from the frog because it's a little uncomfortable. And then he would squeeze out, 10 more seconds of sound out of the last 2 inches of bow at the tip. So, this is a little bit about personal preference. And of course, you should listen to your teacher too, but that's just my suggestion. Look a little bit at least into curving the fingers of your bow hand, which gives you a little more, flexibility at the frog. And that is all I have to say. Your interpretation is just beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's very nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you. Have a nice day.
Okay, bye. So next we have Eliza or Eliza.
Eliza, if you in here, please rest your hand. 请你举一下你的手。Eliza Sun， 如果你在这里的话，请你举一下手。
Maybe not
in here.
All
Yeah,
right,
yeah. So
I'll speak anyway, and hopefully you will get these comments by video. So you played Kavalevsky Concerto and the Brahms Hungarian Dance No. 2. I think you did a fine job. You learned it very well, both pieces. Now my main suggestion for you is the violin hold. So when the violin is not at least horizontal or even slightly up, that would be ideal in my world. But when the violin is hanging down too much, then there are a lot of things there's a lot of trouble that comes from there. So first of all, your bow, everything with the bow hand and the bow arm is adjusting kind of upwards, which isn't ideal. Or you then drop the elbow too much, so the angles are just not quite ideal. The other thing is when your violin is down, your bow wants to move away from the bridge because it's kind of a sliding slope. So having your violin up is the number one most important thing, so that your bow will, if anything, it will move a little bit towards the bridge, which gives you a much more focused sound, so not such a fuzzy sound. When your bow is a little too far away from the bridge, it likely wants to skid around. That sort of, rather than really, grabbing the string really well. Good. The next thing is to develop your vibrato. Again, also with you, the vibrato is advanced enough where I think you need a lot of vibrato just to make the music more alive. And it is also tradition of this kind of repertoire, Brahms, Kavalevsky, which is in a way 20th century, but in the romantic tradition in a way. So I think vibrato is definitely part of the style. Okay, then one more thing about the bow hand also for you. Curve the fingers of your hand. Straight fingers are tight. They tend to be full of tension. We want them to be round, so the sound is, the overall sound quality is better. Okay, those are my comments for you, Eliza. Good. Is Doris around? Doris Heyman. Ooh. Maybe not. Doris, are you around?
He in here. Right.
That's okay. All right. So here are my comments. So posture is most important for you. So the violin, just like I told the previous contestant, finding a way to hold the violin higher up would be good. Now, if you're very far down, then maybe at least raise it a little bit, maybe something like this. Oh, there's Doris. Doris, if you can.
Yeah, Doris, you can open your camera and
And your microphone too.
Yeah, and your microphone.
Hi, Doris. How are you?
Good. How are you?
You're good. Okay, good. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Good. So I was just mentioning, I don't know if you heard it, but posture is very, very, very important. Okay. So holding up the violin a little bit more would be good. I mean, other than that, I think your posture is actually pretty good. But the violin hold, if you can hold it up higher, that would be great. And you might have to experiment a little bit with shoulder pads and chin rest in what gives you just kind of an automatic violin that's automatically up. Okay. Then for the bow hand, more wrist flexibility. Everything should be flexible. If you can work on that, that would be great. So you want to make sure on every stroke that you're actually using your joints. And you can just do it on open strings, and really start flexing and bending and straightening all your joints. So I think you can definitely fix that, especially when it comes to the straight bow, to make sure, because once you use your joints, then the slightly crooked bow will not be there anymore. You see, as soon as I start using my joints, the bow goes much straighter. So that, I think you should fix that, and you can easily do that. Okay, good. Then for the Monty, yes, in the middle of the piece there's a double stop passage. And you should vibrate your double stops too. Just because they're double stops doesn't mean we don't have to vibrate them. It's a little tricky, but you can do it. Then the Bach, it was the A minor concerto. Was it? Can you remind me? Was it the first movement?
Yes.
Right. So almost all Baroque music that's fast has to do, or is somewhat derivative of dance music, even though it doesn't say jig or minuet or so. It still is kind of related to dance music. So even this first movement, I think you can be a little bit dancey with it, For example, that, so you can imagine these are leaps. So there's a dancer leaping up into the air and landing, rather than everything legato and kind of stoic. It's a little more lively. Dancey, you should always think dancey for all Baroque music, unless it's a super somber, slow piece. And in the Telemann, yes, so I wrote that actually, I think this movement, I think it was a slow movement, is actually very profound music. And so find a sound that's more deep and it's more complex in a way. Don't just let the bow glide over the strings, but maybe occasionally have a little bit more weight, a little more bow pressure, that you can really change the sound. I forgot the piece, but you see, you can even just practice single notes, open strings or not, it doesn't matter. Just practice getting a deeper sound. So you see, in each note, you can do a scale or whatever. In each note, you just lean a little bit into the string to make the character a little more profound. Okay? Good. Those are my comments. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you too.
Okay, bye. All right, next is Eric. Hi, Eric. Nice to meet you.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hi. Where are you?
This is a filter.
Okay. Yeah, it's fine. Looked like you were in a greenhouse. That's,
Yeah.
I like it. And do you live in America or in Canada?
I'm in Canada right now.
You're in Canada. Okay, good. So I wrote in my comments, yeah, I liked a lot of things. There are really many, many excellent things. You have kind of a good combination. It's loose, and there's also tension when needed. So that's always a good combination. I guess sometimes there is a tiny bit too much tension physically, sometimes, but you have looseness too. So I think for you, it's not a matter of turning a tense person into somebody loose. You already have the looseness. It's just you have to figure out when it's too much tension. And I'm not saying everything has to be completely always buttery loose, because that can be boring too. So you want to just figure out or start noticing, and maybe when you watch the video, start noticing where's too much tension. So for example, the vibrato is probably one of those things where you want to find a way to have a little motor going that doesn't tense up your arm. And you could do sort of an exercise. Maybe you do 4 different kinds of vibrato. The first one is just 4 per bow. And very wide. And very soft, pianissimo. And then the next one, the second one, would be something like kind of ridiculously wide and wobbly. So you want to hear the up and down of the pitch really well, because it means you're really loose in the wrist. So that would be your second vibrato. Your third one would be kind of a normal vibrato and forte. And as you do that, you can also do just one note at a time and start listening to what you hear, and then decide how do you want it? Do you want it to be have more sizzle or more relaxation, or it depends a little bit on the person. And then the fourth one, you can go absolutely wild, and you just go as fast and loud and crazy as possible. Something like that. And don't do this only once, because it kind of takes a lot from the biceps, so you want to make sure you don't, hurt your muscles. And so once you've practiced these 4 different kinds of vibrato, the mixture of all 4 is probably going to be something very enjoyable. So work a little bit on vibrato. The middle section of the third movement in the frunk, I think, could be sweeter. So that seemed a little bit tense, maybe. It's this section. Especially now here, very, very sweet and not too loud. So that it's very special writing in a way, these sort of meandering lines that are harmonically so complex. I think make sure it's not too tight, I think that's the character of this. And that's sort of the main stuff I have for you. Let me just see one more thing. The Bach. Of course, the Bach, you're probably aware there were memory issues in the Bach. So, such is life. Memory is, it can be practiced actually without the instrument. And that is one of the best methods, which is you have the music in front of you, and you sit down in a chair, and the violin is off to the side. And as you look at the passage, you can put your hand on it, on your arm, or even just in the air, and you actually go through the motions, but you don't play an actual instrument as you see that. So that's step number one. Step number two is you look at it, again, no instrument, and in the left hand you just kind of imagine you're playing the notes, and you don't actually do this anymore. So you just kind of, and you get a little tingly feeling in your third finger when you're supposed to play third finger, and you get a tingly feeling in your first finger when you're supposed to play first finger, but you don't actually do that. And so there are these sort of variety of steps. And then the next thing is you just put your hands down and you just look at the score and imagine you play it. And then pick up the violin and play the passage again. And before you know, the memory is much more solid because you haven't constantly been preoccupied with your fingers, but you've only been using your brain. Of course, memory is about brain, right? So I would strongly recommend practice memory without the instrument, and try it out. Just try it out with one phrase, like a 2-line phrase, and it'll work. By the way, Bach is the hardest composer to memorize, so don't feel bad. We all have trouble with it. Okay, good. And just one last thing. For me, the chords in the Bach, you play the Adagio, right? From the G minor. The Adagio. Okay, so the chords for me, they're a little too heroic. I don't think you need to lift the bow before a chord, because then the bow comes crashing down. And in this sort of Adagio, it's not about that. I think chord just means harmony. You know, it's not like in the Bruch Concerto, in the third movement, where chords is a heroic thing, you know, where it's that sort of power. In Bach, it just means harmony. Now, we don't need to lift. You see, I kept the bow on the string and I kept the bow going, rather than even having that tiny bit of a lift gives you, gives you an attack. And then they become a little too romantic, too heroic. All right, good. And Mendelssohn, very well played. Good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to meet you. Take care.
You too.
Okay, next is Mary, and there she is. Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. So the Bruch is, I wrote that in my notes, the Bruch is a dark piece. First of all, the key of G minor is pretty somber. And I think you need to find that sort of character. You know, what is a dark sound on the violin? What is a somber sound on the violin? The first thing that will help that is that you make sure your intonation is never too high. So already on that opening, a B flat should be very low note in G minor because it's the third, right? So intonation is one of the first ways to make a sound more dark. Okay. There's already your next B flat. And again B flat. And another B flat. And another B flat. Okay, so that's intonation. The next thing is that the vibrato could be bolder. So if, for example, I play the next phrase, again now let's assume the intonation is lower in general. Right, if I add only little vibrato, the sound is in a way a little superficial. Now to make it deeper, darker, you can add a lot of vibrato, so very bold vibrato. So that's a number 2. First, intonation lower, big bold vibrato. And then, of course, the intonation on the chords. I'm sure you're aware that these chords are quite tricky. And, you know, whenever you have a series of chords, not just one chord, but many in a row, it just takes an incredible amount of very, very slow practice. So you might want to reconsider how you practice. You know, when you practice slowly, is it so slow that you can actually, you know, repair things as you go along, or is it just a little bit too fast when you practice? So that's definitely something you want to think about. And, you know, here's an advice for chords. You should build them from the ground up. So for example, so you want to first just concentrate on the lowest note and do that a couple of times. Then you add the middle note until that feels really good. And then you add the upper note. And then you do the same thing with the next note. Again, from the bottom up. And the next note, you add one note at a time. You see, before you know, you have 3 chords that are already in tune. And so on and so forth. So slow practicing for chords, very crucial. The Beethoven is quite well played. Good job. So the only thing you can do with it is, I think, give it a little bigger energy. You know, it's a very lively piece. It's almost circus music. It's so bubbly and energetic. So maybe the fortes can be have a bigger splash. And then the piano is also very, very lively. I think that's definitely, those are the sort of things you can still do with the Beethoven. But other than that, good job on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Good. So next, Jiao. Except for I'm probably not pronouncing your name right. Can you tell me your name?
I have a preferred name and it's Sunny.
Yes, can keep talking.
I see. Suddenly my microphone was muted. Okay, so can you tell me your name?
Oh yeah, my name is Sunny.
Sunny.
Yeah,
That's easy.
yeah.
Good. Really good job. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Loved it. So many good things. Wieniawski and Gypsy Airs. That's, by the way, that's kind of a handful to have both pieces ready at the same time, but you did, and really, really well. And the nicest thing about your playing is that it's very musical, and it's really beautifully played. It's you're making music, which is fantastic. So bravo for the octaves on the first page in the Wieniawski. Fantastic, really good. Then, so those are the compliments. Now, my recommendation for you is when you have runs, when you have 16th passages, usually 16th passages, then things get a little bit unclean. And I think it has to do with the mechanics of your left hand. So, it's a little bit of a pity because you're so musical, but I tell you, I think you're young enough that if you if you train your left hand like a well-oiled little machine, then you've got everything, because you have the musicianship and everything. And when it's not passage work, it's very, very good, very clean. And then when you have passages, that needs to be cleaner. So essentially, let me read my comments, because it was 3 days ago that I watched it. All right, so I wrote that ideally your left hand fingers, they go up and down with great precision and independence, sort of like pistons in an engine. So if you imagine a car engine, let's say an 8-cylinder, there are 8 cylinders, they all fire in a certain sequence. And when the explosion happens of the mixture of air and gasoline, right, with a little spark from the spark plug, the piston gets shot up in the cylinder. And that piston, that has to be an incredibly precise motion of the finger coming up and then coming down, so in your left hand. And so you want to train that with some sort of basic exercises, something like this. So I just worked on my second finger, that essentially I'm lifting the finger really high and make sure it comes down quite strongly. And then you do the same thing maybe with a whole step. And then you work on the other fingers too. So you see, the independence of the fingers is very important. And then same thing with fourth finger, of course. Now, of course, with the fourth finger, it's the hardest. But you're just going to keep working on that until that fourth finger comes up and down like a piston in a precise engine. And then when you have your runs, like... forgot how it goes, but... whatever it is, you see, so the independence of the fingers really then shows. Of course, the gypsy airs is all runs, right, or mostly runs. So again, that left hand, that just needs to work like a little sewing machine going, right? Good. Then the double stop triplets on the third page. Oh yeah, that's in the Wieniawski. I think you're playing them very staccato or even spiccato. I think I would prefer them actually on the string. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can quickly find it here. I think something like that. You know, rather than all short. That's kind of a preference thing. I mean, ultimately you can decide it yourself, but there's no indication that they should be short, and traditionally they're played on the string. All right, that's kind of one of the major things about the Wieniawski. But again, really fine job. Good. And nice to meet you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care. Good. So that was Sunny. Fang Fang, do you want me to continue with one more or stop here?
One more and come to the Alina. Yeah, that's Jerry Yao and Alina and Tablet. Okay. Jerry, how? You in here? Please raise your hand. Jerry 好，你在这里吗？如果你在的话，请你举一下手，我就能看到你。I think, Professor, you can keep talking.
Okay, good. So, Jerry, the first thing, my first suggestion is that the Road Caprice number 17, it is actually meant to be a spiccato etude. So it's definitely important that you work on getting the bow off the string. And the best location to do that would be near the frog. So let me quickly see. Yes. And I don't know what edition you have, but most editions indicate that it's supposed to be spiccato. Of course, except the first two notes. Good. So you have legato, but then get the bow off the string. Other than that, I think you played it quite well, but spiccato is absolutely necessary because that is what the etude is about. Now let me go back to my notes, if I can find them. Good, and by the way, for making that happen, it's very important that the fingers of the bow hand are round. And the other thing is that your bow is skidding across the strings really a little bit, and the bow is also quite far away from the ideal place, the ideal contact point, which is about ½ inch away from the bridge. So ideally, get the bow in a good contact point and make sure the string, the bow grabs the string. Good. Then the main reason for that is, of course, that the sound has much more overtones and has more depth. So I would just practice scales, you know, kind of close to the bridge, slowly. Something like that. Same thing with the Bach presto. Really watch your contact point, hold the violin up and make sure the bow is not too far away. Start very, very slow and just kind of work your way up. So it's all about sound quality. Good. Now, Fang Fang, a break now, or should I discuss Elaine Lee?
I think Elaine finished. I think talk next Elena and Tebra. One more.
Okay. So Elaine, are you here?
Elena not in here.
Oh, she's not here. She's not here. Okay.
So just talking.
Okay. So Elaine, you played Dankla and Bartók. Yeah, I think you memorized it really well, which is good. And also what's very good about your bow hand is that it's absolutely loose. So that is really very, very good. Now, your main thing to improve, I would suggest, is to look into your general posture. So we need to find a way when we play violin, especially when we play several hours a day sometimes, is for the head not to be leaning either to the left or to the right, because eventually that can give you trouble with, just physically, with tension, muscle tension. You can have pinched muscles or pinched nerves. You don't want to go down that route. So having the violin essentially be so that you can be as natural as possible is important. So just stand there in front of a mirror when you practice, and then bring up the violin, and ideally you don't change anything with your head. Okay, so that's the first thing. Then the next thing is just for you to, essentially keep advancing through the repertoire, keep advancing through exercises and etudes and whatever else you're doing with your technique, so that sooner than later you get to, you know, to the repertoire that has all the wonderful stuff in it that we all love so much about classical music. So right now you're still kind of in a student repertoire territory, which is fine, but you want to get out of that as soon as possible because there's so much more amazing music out there. So I just encourage you to really keep practicing and speed through the repertoire and exercises and etudes so you get out into the big world of music. Okay, and that is that. So, Fang, should I continue with Charles?
Now is take a breath.
Take a break.
Take a break. Yeah, take a break. Yeah, you can drink some tea and rest 1 minute. 2 minutes.
2 minutes. I will drink tea for 2 minutes. Okay, I'll see you soon.
Okay, see you soon. Now is polling time. Please choose who is your favorite contestant on the junior year division A and B， 请你们选。我待会呢会发一个，就是有一个问题，就是相信你们已经看了，就是我们放在这个 GOCAA music.com 上面的这个少年 A 组和 B 组的视频。然后呢，请你选出你认为你最喜欢的一个选手。你可以选择你的好朋友，选择你最喜欢的选手，也可以给自己投个票。Now is vote time。好，现在大家是中间休息的时间，大家可以给前面的选手投个票。你可以为自己投票，也可以为你的好朋友们、为你认识的朋友们、为你喜欢的朋友们投票。我们中间有个小小的休息的时间，也是为大家鼓劲，鼓励大家就是继续在这个比赛上面能取到更好的成绩，也为自己的鼓劲。好，谢谢你们，我给2分钟的时间给大家投票。那你们的这个点评的评语，还有你们的分数和奖项，我们将会在1个星期之后发到你们的 email， 到时候请你们接收你们的 email。我看到哇，最高票数好像是 Max Long 9票哦，10票，哇！欢迎大家为你们喜爱的选手投票，也为你自己投票。 好，看看你们的投票。Wow. Max long is 10 wow, 10 votes. 然后最高票数是 Max 然后有10位的投票。好，我们中间就是这个一点小小的时间跟大家一起分享，然后我们继续下半场的这个点评。好，也是请各位选手，请你们把你们的名字，把你们选手的名字把它改成选手的名字，让我可以更容易的找到你们，邀请你们进入到这个 Zoom meeting。所以请你们把你们的名字改成这个选手的名字，谢谢。Okay, and Professor, you can
Keep going. I get okay. So the last person I talked to was it Charles? Charles. Did I talk to Charles?
Charles. Okay, I looking for Charles. Oh, in here.
All right, now I need to talk to Charles. Is Charles here? I don't see him anywhere. Hi, Charles.
Yeah.
Are you around?
Yeah, Charles in here.
He's not, or he is?
In here.
He is here? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Hi.
Hi, Charles. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Okay. So you played Brahms Dance Number 2, the Hungarian Dance Number 2, and Beethoven Number 8. Okay. You learned your pieces quite well. And good job for learning them well. Now, my main suggestion for you is your body, you're kind of folded over. And ideally, when we play the violin, we don't want to do that, because imagine if you had to play the violin 4 or 5 hours a day, when you're folded over, that, you see there's trouble right there, right? So find a way to stand up kind of straight. Maybe you can do that in front of a mirror. And then even without the bow, you just kind of find a way to have your violin up without changing your entire body. So then you do that 3, 4, 5 times, without the violin and with the violin. So there are slight changes, but it's not a huge change, okay? You want to be natural. That's very, very important.
Yeah.
And good. So the next thing is with the bow hand, ideally our fingers are round. So when we have straight fingers, then again there's trouble, because when we have straight fingers, things get very tight. For example, this muscle gets tight when this finger is straight, and this tension can be for the entire arm. Not so good. So as soon as you bend that finger, round it, then this muscle here gets very, very soft, and then all the tension is gone. So round finger is very important. For example, the thumb too. If you have a straight thumb, then this muscle is tight. If you bend your thumb, then this muscle gets soft. Of course, soft is better for playing and being loose than tight, so round fingers. Okay, and the reason why I'm saying that is not just it looks better when things are round, but of course it sounds better. That's the most important thing, is how does it sound? So if I have a lot of tension, I'm exaggerating. You see, the heart sounds kind of hard. And if things are round, then the sound is more pretty in a way. Good. And then just one more suggestion for you, which is to develop your vibrato. Now, for example, the Beethoven is, it's a very lively piece, but there's still opportunity to vibrate even when you have short notes. So, for example, like that top note, I think it's so much nicer if you vibrate, right? despite the music not being very, very slow, kind of fast, but there's still a lot of opportunity to vibrate in there. And those are my suggestions.
Okay.
All right, it was very nice to meet you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye, you're welcome. Okay, next is Alex. So that was Charles. Alex, yeah. Hi, Alex. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
So what I wrote, actually, you have a really good skill, which is a kind of a unique skill, which is when things are slightly off with your pianist, you always find a way back with her. I think it was her. And that in itself is a really good, because it means you can recover well. And, you know, half of life is recovering, because life is never totally smooth. It never goes completely as planned. There are always little surprises here and there. And the most important thing is not preventing little things from happening. The most important thing is knowing how to recover when something happens. And so you do that really well. That's good. Now, however, ideally, of course, we have to recover less often. So I think when you have to recover, it's mostly after runs or in the middle of runs. You need to know your runs well. I think that's what I noticed about the Beethoven. And let me quickly show you something. For example, Beethoven number 8. How do we practice runs? The first way to do it, there. You could practice with rhythms. Do you ever practice with rhythms?
Like different rhythm exercises?
Right, so for example, let's take this run. Or, which isn't the easiest scale actually because it's détaché. So the way you would practice is with rhythms is
Oh yeah, like syncopation.
exactly. Or maybe we can call it dotted rhythms. And so that would be the first rhythm, and the second rhythm would be, instead of long short, you would do short long. All right, and then so you do each of these rhythms a few times, and you'll see one of them is always harder than the other one, and that's the one you have to practice especially hard because it kind of exposes, you know, maybe the shift or the awkward string crossing or whatever it is. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Good. And then the next step you would do is, I don't have a metronome here, but it's very simple. You just turn on the metronome and you go painstakingly slowly, you know, maybe click by the 8th note. And then you go up, you know, not just one click or one notch, but a few at a time, like 3. Otherwise you're here until tomorrow. And before you know, you have it. So that's how I would definitely look at runs. And I don't know if that run was the problem or it's probably this one, which is hard. Right, that's a tricky one. So whenever you have runs, that's when things get a little messy, and then you have to kind of catch up with your pianist. And ideally, you know, if you practice in a very organized way, then you don't have to, you know, fix things. You fix them at home when you practice, and then when you get together with the pianist, it's in a way, it's smoother. It's smoother and easier, okay? Now let me see what else. Maybe just one more comment. Alex. Oh yeah, intonation in the double stops of the Brahms. Of course, that's tricky, as you know. And so, very, very slow, just holding a double stop until you know it's in tune, next double stop. And then you could even practice those double stops with rhythm. So you go from one double stop to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. Or you do the first two, da-da, and then the next two, da-da. And you kind of, you mix things up and also with metronome. So they're harder than they look in a way in that Brahms. But yeah. Maybe just one more thing. I think if I remember you correctly, the bow tilting. So the hair should always face the bridge. It's kind of easy to remember. So if you were a cellist, you would have your bow kind of like this so that the hair points into the bridge. And if you're a violinist, you have again the hair facing the bridge. So sometimes it's the other way around. You want to make sure the bow is always, the stick of the wood is always facing away from the bridge. All right?
Okay.
Good. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Alex. Okay, next is Emily Hua. We have Jessica Hua, or are you Emily?
I'm Emily.
You're Emily. Okay, good. Jessica's your sister. Good. So let me just remind myself what you play. Oh yeah, Franck, third and fourth movement. It's absolutely fabulous how you play. You're a true musician, and the most really wonderful thing about your playing is that it's complex. So you show the complexity of the music, and the Franck Sonata is one of the most complex pieces. It's considered sort of the greatest violin sonata of all times. I wrote my doctorate dissertation on this piece. So I wrote 100 pages on this piece that he just performed. And 100 pages is not enough to actually describe the incredible intricacy and complexity of the emotion and of the expression of the piece. Each movement is so unique. Yet the most amazing thing is that actually all the movements are really linked together in a very complex sort of way. And I won't get into that now, but I think you understand really wonderfully that this music is rich and full of colors and shadings and kind of an endless ocean of expression. So you it's never boring when you play, and it's always sensitive to what's going on in the music, and that's really great, I have to say. Okay, more accolades for you. Your intonation is really excellent.
Thank you.
Very good. You have a really fine ear. So for you, I have very, very little constructive criticism. It's this bowhold thing again that I think I'm telling quite a lot of students today. It's generally considered a little bit old-fashioned to have the fingers straight or stiff. So even if you can just round them a little bit, I don't know if there's something in between. So I don't remember exactly how you hold your bow, but if you have your index finger on the stick between the second and third joints, between the knuckle joint and the next joint, then you have officially a Russian bow hold. If you have your finger on the stick between this joint and that joint, then you have a Franco-Belgian bow hold, which would be this, which is sort of what almost everybody actually has today. Perlman, Zuckerman, all these fancy violinists. And there's a certain looseness and a softness and a suppleness that goes really well with that, especially at the frog, where there's a lot of weight, right, of the arm at the frog. Now, you can make a Russian bow hold work fine. That's absolutely fine. So if you have your finger here, and then your fingers are a little straight. Now, if you can keep them somewhat loose and flexible, then you maybe have the best of both worlds. But I think your fingers are a little too straight. And so if you want to look into that, that would be my main comment to you. And then I just actually, okay, I wrote in my comments, because you might have even better bow changes and even better string changes too. When things are round, of course, it's easier to do that. When things are straight, it's, it gets a little stiff there. So I just have one more comment, which is the last note of the last movement, which I think is a little stiff. I think that's it's such a strange thing. It goes way up and then you end on this last final low note. And it shouldn't come as something heavy and inert, but it needs to have a splash about it. So, have you watched your recording of both frunk movements? I'm sure you have, right?
Yeah.
Good. So I don't know if you remember your last note, but you want to have something that maybe you raise your bow, and every time you raise your bow at the end of a note, it gives the sound a little bit more of a life, rather than kind of stomping it into the ground. So I think giving that note a reverberance is very important. And believe it or not, that's all I have to say. So essentially just two things. Curve, 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 at least a little bit, and a nice splash on the last note. And other than that, I think your playing is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
Good, you're welcome, and it was nice to meet you.
You too.
Okay, take care. So next is Ashley. Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm fine. You did a fantastic job on the Lalo.
Thank you.
Really excellent. It's so secure. I think your technique is world class. It's absolutely wonderful. It's also very powerful. Everything is really strong. And so the only thing for you I have is that because everything is so incredibly strong and solid, we want to have a little bit more variety, even within this first movement. The nice thing about this piece is the 5 movements, and there's a lot of variety between all the movements. But since you only play one movement, you need to find variety within whatever you play in a competition, so that not everything has that same sort of, overdrive sort of sound. Because there are plenty of possibilities where you can show that, and then you want to show a little bit the more flexible side of the music. That's all really, but I cannot complain about anything, especially technically, and your sound is really strong and just fantastic. Then I also wrote that it sounds very metronomic, and I'm 100% convinced that you practice this with metronome. Yes, you're nodding. That means you are. And that's good. That's fine, by the way. Metronome is just one of the ways to make something really good. The problem is when you then perform, it shouldn't sound like you have a click going on inside your head and that you're trying to stay with. You still have to, you can still play in a strict way, but have the musicality be the number one thing rather than the technical click sort of thing be the number one thing. So it's more of a what's number one, what's number two. It's not that you have to get rid of practicing with metronome. It's not that. I'm actually very glad you practice with metronome because it's so good. It's then just when you turn the metronome off, make it a little freer. And then along those lines, it's a little bit the dynamic shadings. So, for example, and what I mean is sort of micro shadings that even within a phrase or within a measure, you can have 5 different dynamics rather than everything at the same dynamics. So, for example, now if it's all the same dynamic, then it's right. So it's like a block of sound. Now you do that so well, I think your next step is to just give a little bit more life in terms of dynamics. So, now, for example, this note, I think it can have a dynamic life. Do you kind of know what I mean? Good. So a little more up and down. It's kind of fun, by the way, anyway, to do that sort of thing. And I think the music wants it. Then that is actually, those were my comments. You're just fantastic. You're a real talent, and it'll be very nice to hear you in a year or in 2 or in 10.
Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. Take care.
You too.
Good. We have Jeffrey. Chu.
I'm not sure Jeffrey Zhu in here. Jeffrey 周，你在这里吗？如果你在的话，请举一下手。I think not in here.
Okay.
So you can keep talking.
Good. Okay, so Jeffrey, I really like what I see in your bow arm, which is that it's absolutely perfectly straight, and that's actually much harder than we think, having a really truly straight bow arm. So you figured out how that works super well. So that's very, very good. And I think you learned your pieces well. There were no major mishaps taking place, so that is also good, just having a good operation and getting through just fine. Now, your music needs a little bit more fire. I think it's definitely time for you to make the music more personal in a way. I think energy is needed, and energy is an interesting thing with the bow. You want to always adjust all the ingredients. It's just like in cooking. If you, for example, add pressure, then you also have to add other things like bow speed. So if I add only pressure, it will scratch, right? If I add pressure and bow speed, then the sound is, pleasant. Now, if I add only speed without enough pressure, then again, that's not great. So you want to adjust your ingredients in terms of your bow technique so that the sound is really ideal. I think especially in faster passages, let me check what repertoire you played. Oh yeah, Kabalevsky and Beethoven number 8. So in faster passages, you want to make sure that you don't scrub with the bow. So that's too much noise. Now this would be too light. So somewhere in between, there's just the right amount of pressure. Okay. Good. And then watch intonation in the Beethoven. It sometimes is a little bit flat. So you could practice, with drones, and you can have a I don't have my machine right now on this table, but finding a drone, for example, in G, of course, the piece is in G major, so you have a note running all the time. And while that machine or the drone is playing, you just adjust all your Gs, first of all. You make sure they match. And you stop on every G. And make sure all those Gs match. Then the next thing you need to match is all the Ds. So those are your dominants, right? The dominant should also match the drone. So that D, make sure they match. So definitely intonation work is important for the Beethoven because the music is light and very transparent, like most classical music, and so we want it very, very clean. Good, so that is Jeffrey. And then next is Mingde, and I think that is Andy, if I got it right. Andy, are you there?
Hello.
Hi, you are Andy, right? Oh yeah, there.
Yes.
Okay, good. So let me see what you played. Brahms, Hungarian Dance number 2 and Beethoven 8. Good. So first suggestion for you is a posture readjustment. I'm sure when you have your violin not up, and you just stand there normally, you're more or less symmetrically standing there. I can see how you sit there. Perfect. And the next thing is you want to not change too much when you bring your violin up. So you see I'm still kind of the way I am normally without my violin. Okay, I need to tilt my head or turn my head a little bit. So these sort of minor adjustments are okay. But you want to make sure essentially you're kind of the same. And for you, the main thing is the violin, which ideally would be much higher up rather than, facing south. Did anyone ever mention that to you?
Yes.
Okay, I think you should definitely take that serious because that's going to change a lot about your playing.
Okay. Sure.
So violin posture. Good. The next thing is, why do we actually do that? Because your bow, again, when your violin is down, your bow wants to, of course, slide down, right? So when your violin is up, it's more likely that your contact point, it's getting kind of dark lately, but anyway, let me see. That your contact point is, is closer to the bridge. About half an inch away from the bridge or even less, rather than down here.
Okay.
Good. So then the next thing is, yes, when you have your violin up, your left hand becomes lighter because things start to kind of levitate and point up rather than pointing down and be kind of heavy. I hope that kind of makes sense. Even visually, you can kind of see that.
Yes.
Right. So this, and then you can come around the violin when you shift much more easily when the violin is up, right? And then the intonation improves because things are lighter. Because when we're heavy, then it's hard to, improve the intonation because we're kind of climbing up. So there are so many benefits to this violin holding up thing that it's definitely worth for you to look into. Okay, good. Double stops in the Brahms, difficult, right? Not so easy. You want to work on that, very, very slowly. But you're probably done with these pieces now, so whatever piece you're going to learn next, if it has double stops in it, just practice them extremely slowly until everything is just really good. Beethoven was very good. I think you learned it. And I also like the tempo. It's sprightly and just perfect tempo. That was good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so work on posture, and I think you'll see there will be many benefits. Okay?
Okay, sure.
Take care.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a nice day.
You too. All right, we have the last two. Eugene, if you're around.
Eugene, if you're in here, please raise your hand. Eugene， 你在群里吗？如果你在 Zoom， 请你举一下你的手，让我可以找到你。I think you're not in here, and Professor, you can keep talking.
Okay, good. So this was the Eccles Sonata, and I think you played the first 2 movements. Yes. All right. So somebody's joining. No. I wrote that the first movement of the Eccles definitely needs quite a bit more variety. You know, you play everything very, very kind of the same. So you want to definitely come up with a dynamic plan, you know. What are more important notes? What are less important notes? Are they all the same? If I remember the piece correctly, I probably am going to play it in the wrong key, but for example, that A is probably more important than the F. That's a typical Baroque thing, is that we have these sort of sighing motifs. So there's a strong moment and then there's a weak resulting moment. So really get into the dynamic micromanaging of each phrase. And you can go to an extreme and really maybe even pencil every note in. Are you going to do a crescendo? Are you going to do a diminuendo? Or even more complex things. And of course, what comes with the dynamics is how you use your bow. So fast bow can create a lot of sound. Sometimes a fast bow, you can use it to make a very sort of a fluffy sound. And a slow bow can be a heavy sound. And a faster bow can be a more relaxed sound. So there are many, many different ways of using the bow. It's not just one is one and the other one is the other. You can mix and match and really listen to the sound production. Now, ultimately, the sound is something that comes from the inside. How do you want the note to sound? How do you want the phrase to sound? So my next advice is to really sing. Especially slow movements are easy to sing. And then start developing the sound how you hear it. All right. And then lastly, I think you can listen to recordings. And no matter what some people say, you should never listen to recordings. I disagree. It would mean the same thing like never going to a concert and hearing other people play. Now, we should not copy one recording and listen to it 100 times and copy every little thing. We should not do that. But listening to other people's performances and recordings, I think is definitely a good way of learning about how to phrase something and how to adjust your sound, and you know what to do with the sound. Now, your pianist is very steady, and in the second movement, I think you need to listen to that piano part better because it can give you kind of a structure and be more solid with your rhythm. So essentially, your tendency is that you're rushing a little bit, you're playing a little bit before the beat. So try to undo that. All right, and then I think you need to control your bow more, and you should learn, you should learn staccato strokes, really, really clean, short, and also learn spiccato, so throwing the bow on the string. And there's a very easy exercise for that. You just start with one note, and make sure you really throw the bow, and then you can do the same up bow. Throw the bow on the string and throw it quite hard. And then you do 2 notes. And then you do up, down, and then you do 3 notes. And then eventually 4 notes, 5 notes, 6, 7, 8, and so on. And it might take a month or two to really learn a good spiccato, but definitely time to do that now. Okay, so those are my comments for Eugene. And now if we have Gabrielle here. Hi, Gabrielle. Is your sound on your microphone?
Hello.
Hi. I think you
How are
like
you?
I think you like skiing.
I do. Actually, no, I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay.
Yeah.
That's because you were wearing a ski hat on your foot.
Oh, I see.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
And the first word I wrote about your playing, it says it all, and it simply says fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. It's your playing is strong and expressive. You have great technique to back it all up with, and you're a true musician. So I
Thank you.
thoroughly enjoyed both the second and third movement of the frog. It was the second and third, right?
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, really, really terrific. So let me see if I can find some constructive criticism for you, because it was really all just absolutely fantastic. But I think I can find one or two tiny things. So let me look at my comments. Oh yeah, I wrote that the sunnier moments could be a little bit more relaxed and maybe blissful. So let's see if we can find sunny moments. So for example, in the third movement, we probably can. You know that it's in that middle section where things get kind of dreamy.
Where exactly?
And you can talk to your pianist about being even a tiny bit more flexible, so that each note, especially when you have those ties, is a little more delicious. So no need to be in any rush. You know what I mean? So I would say that could be kind of a sunny moment, especially later when you're can have a little harmonic there, here and there, just to have the sound almost, become celestial and very, very sweet in a way. And I think what I was probably referring to is actually in the, let me see if I can find my score. It's in the second movement. What's sunny in the second movement? I think towards the bottom of the second page, if you have the same, let's see, layout as I do. So for example, that A, after those A flats, now it changes. You see, sometimes it's individual notes. You know what I mean? That suddenly you can change the color and make it really, really radiant, like a little sun just went up in that moment. And then maybe gets dark again. so incredibly complex. We cannot say this whole thing is pure sunshine, right? Even the phrase I just played. So I don't think you need to, revise your philosophy or how you see this music. I think you're doing it so fabulously well. It's just tiny moments where suddenly you can maybe be a little more radiant and uplifting, and it's not, you don't have to change the whole interpretation of the whole movement or piece, So now I wrote. Okay, so this is now this might interest you because you're a really fabulous musician and you can understand this. One of the disciples, one of the students of Franck, wrote a biography on him, and that was Vincent d'Indy. He was a composer in his own right, and he was the biggest admirer of César Franck, and he analyzed this piece kind of to death in a way, because it's a very complex piece of music, right? It's huge and 4 enormous movements, and he analyzed it so that everything starts with a germinating cell of 3 notes, and it's the 3 notes in the piano part at the very opening of the first movement. This dum body, bum body, dum body, dum da da, and then you come in, and there are your 3 notes. So everything has to do with these 3 notes, and in every movement, and that's very typically French composing technique of the 19th century, which is called cyclicism. Cyclicism means things come back, things get recycled. Even such a tiny little motif, you can find that in every movement in a variety of places. And the reason why I'm telling you this is, for example, even in the second movement, when you have so there are your 3 notes again, right? And what I mean to say is when you play this forte and passionately and all that, you should never forget that initially it started with a very sweet kind of general character. So therefore we should not play absolutely with gung-ho, huge sound. It should be beautiful sound and big sound, but keep in mind that it is all kind of related to this originating cell of 3 notes, which had a great elegance. So I would rather play and I know this is going down a route of, we could talk forever now, all of us, not just you and I, about the complexity of this piece. But know that compositionally speaking, everything is kind of connected. And maybe reading up a little bit about this sort of motivic connection between the movements, what comes back, can kind of give you an overall sort of better understanding still of this music. And that's kind of the last step you can do with this music, because you played it so well and with such a great sound and intonation, and just really fantastic. So very, very good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care.
Thank you, Professor. You give a lot of good idea for GOCAA contestant. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
No, thank you. And now also at the pouring time, you can take a little bit break, and now 2 minutes for pouring time. 好， 现在有一个投票的时间啊，请为这个第二组点 然后大家有些什么问题，可以就是在这个 Q&A 那个地方可以给教授提问题。If you have any question, you can write down on the Q&A. 好，现在开始投票，请你们为你们自己投票，也为你们的最喜欢的这个选手投票。然后在投票的时间呢，也请你们可以有任何问题想就是跟教授沟通的，在你们学习小提琴的时候有什么问题，你们可以就是写在这个 Q&A 上面。If you have any question, you can write down in Q&A. 然后 2 minutes for the vote time. 我们2分钟的时间给大家有一个投票的时间。欢迎大家鼓励自己，也鼓励你的朋友们，也鼓励你最喜欢的小演奏家。相信今天大家都学到了很多的演奏上面的一些技术和技巧。这个视频呢，我们会把它保留下来，我们会放在这个 GOCAA Music 的这个 YouTube 上面，你们大家还可以在后续的时候可以找出来看，然后你们还可以后续的进行一些温习和学习。那希望你们在参加这次比赛的时候，你们获得了很多的就是很好的一些建议。那你们的分数、成绩还有奖项将会在1周之后，我们会用邮件的方式发送给各位，然后就是欢迎大家到时候查阅，1个星期之后查阅你们的邮箱。The comment and the score, we will send email to us. OK, 2 million. 我们看看谁是最高的投票。3票 ，Alice 家有3票。好，看看啊。Professor have some question.
Oh, there are questions. Okay.
Yeah, and
sure.
Q&A.
Oh yeah, I need to. There's one window that's covering the Q&A. Okay. All right. Okay, I think I can answer all these questions easily. So I like these questions. So the first one, when did you start playing the violin? I was 5 years old. And I have a picture of myself in my first violin lesson. Okay, I'm going to show you that. Who wants to see a picture of me in my first violin lesson?
Wow. like little girl.
Exactly. There you go. I didn't like having my hair cut. And that was my father, by the way. He was my teacher for 10 years. All right. What made you pursue a career in music? Good experiences. Good experiences with music. Really enjoying music and enjoying making music together with others. Not necessarily by myself, but the enjoyment of music as being really part of a community. And those were important experiences for me, and I had such a good time essentially playing music with others and experience music on an exciting level and on a high level in a way, in experiencing it with others in chamber music, sonatas, but also trios, quartets. A couple of orchestral experiences that were really fun and exhilarating, and not just the fun of being with others, but then in the concert itself and feeling how there's passion going on around me. And I was 19 when I decided to become a musician. So actually kind of late. I know others are much younger when they decide to study music. But I actually wanted to study something else. And then when I was 19, I decided, these experiences were so important for me. I want to become a musician and do this all the time. All right, then the anonymous attendee is asking, what's your favorite thing about the violin? Well, the violin, a lot of people say the violin is the one instrument that comes closest to the human voice. It's probably true. I think the oboe maybe comes even closer to the human voice, but the violin is certainly very close. So there's probably something about the sound of the violin that resonates with me and with many people. I think a lot of people, especially non-musicians, there's something about the violin that kind of goes straight to the soul, especially if it's played beautifully. We can vibrate, which is such a personal thing. Just like when you sing, most singers have a very personal vibrato. And it's the same thing on the violin. So it's that, plus I think we can develop the sound as we draw the bow. So we can start with one kind of sound, we can grow the sound, or we can diminish the sound even on one stroke. So it's endless. I think what I like most about the violin is that the possibilities of sound are almost endless. What I miss a little bit is that it's never quite the complete picture. So I envy pianists who can sit down on a Sunday morning and play a Bach suite. And the musical artwork is absolutely complete with just one person and 88 keys. That I do envy the pianists for. Of course, we have solo works for violin, but they're not quite, in a way, as rewarding as playing a fugue on the piano. Not that I can play a Bach fugue on the piano. I'm not a very good pianist. But those who can, it must be just amazing to just sit there and play the entire thing from the beginning to the end with not too much effort and a refinement, and there's your complete musical artwork. Okay, so enough about that. What instruments would you play if you didn't play the violin? I think it would be the piano for sure, just because of those reasons that I just said. You can have the complete artwork right there for yourself. Okay. If you weren't a musician, what would you be? I think I would be a linguist, some sort of a profession that has to do with languages. I love languages. Music, of course, is a language, but I love proper languages. I speak Italian, I speak German, I speak French, and I had 7 years of Latin, and I speak Spanish, and I speak English. So I love languages.
Maybe next time is Chinese.
That's. I think that is a really difficult language to learn as an adult. Maybe as a child, okay, but as an adult, I think that would be a very, very tricky one, especially because of the writing.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, what is your favorite violin piece? I think my favorite violin piece, I would say maybe the poem by Chausson. Yeah. I love French music. It's very evocative, it's very imaginative, it's very complex. And the poem by Chausson definitely is up there. And I'm going to type it in the chat. Let's see if it works. Poem by Ernest Chausson. Okay, let's see if that gets sent to everybody. Oh, it only gets sent to the panelists. Is there a way I can...
You say, oh.
Oh, and okay, sorry, I'll do it again.
I give you.
Poem by Ernest Chausson. Okay, I hope that works for everybody. Emily, what is your dog's name? Okay.
This is a good question.
So this dog is Clara, and she's just waking up from a nap. Say hi to her name. Clara. So her name is Clara. Okay, good. My puppy sings. Yes, you know, we used to have a dog that also sang whenever we played chamber music at home. So that's great. You have one too. They do like to sing. What is your favorite composer to play? My favorite composer to play is Mozart. I think Mozart is possibly the greatest composer because the interesting thing is he didn't invent anything. He didn't innovate anything. It's not like Beethoven. Beethoven, he went to the extremes, and he was the first composer to use trombones in an orchestra. He was the first composer to give a separate bass line or an actual line for the basses, different from the cello. While up to Beethoven, they were all just playing the same. So he innovated a lot. And of course, he went towards romantic music while staying a classicist. But Beethoven stayed within the very narrow lines of classicism. But the most amazing thing about it is that within those narrow confines of classicism, he had the absolutely greatest range of emotions that are humanly possible. His music has despair in it. His music has, utter joy. And of course, a lot of people, when they think Mozart, they think it's just always joyous and happy music. And it is not true at all. There's incredible anxiety in his music, especially in the slow movements sometimes. And then the music is celestial and blissful. And what's also interesting about Mozart is he changes characters sometimes 3-4 times within one phrase. And it still sounds organic. So although he changes from funny to singing, from spiccato to legato, he changes that all the time, even within one phrase. It's absolutely perfectly natural and organic. And he did all that at breakneck speed. He didn't have much time to think, what am I going to write next? It just flowed out of his pen onto paper non-stop, essentially, for 34 years, and then he died. So he wrote 626 works in about 30 years, because I guess the first 4 years of his life, or 5 years, he probably didn't write anything because he was just a baby. And then as soon as he was 5 or 6 years old, he started composing, and then he had about 30 years before he died. And in those 30 years, he wrote 600 works. And some of these 600 works are entire evening worth of operas. So for example, the Don Giovanni, one of his famous operas, that's just one of those 626 works. The Requiem, which lasts an hour and a half, is just one of those 626 works. So to write that much music in such a little time, it's just unbelievable. And the variety in his music is really incredible. Okay, last two questions. Or I guess last question. What is your... Wait. Okay, so the questions keep jumping around. I think maybe I answered it all. Favorite thing about the violin instrument? If you're a musician, what is your favorite violin piece?
No,
Composer.
Does music allow you to travel much?
Oh yeah, that question somehow went to the top. So
Just the last question, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it does. Absolutely. Of course, currently not so much. And I'm very sad that our festival, which I'm the director of a festival in Switzerland, which is a lot of fun and it's for musicians of your age and also a little older. And unfortunately, this festival, we had to cancel it again this year. Like last year, it was just too many questions, logistical questions, especially for an international festival. So we decided to just wait another year, but I'm sure next summer we will be back. And so that's just one thing I travel for, and then many concerts and judging competitions. The last competition I judged was in Vietnam, in Hanoi, and it was a very interesting competition. It lasted an entire week, all the rounds, and was a lot of fun. I have a lot of friends in Hanoi, and it was great to see them. So that's one of the wonderful things about traveling as a musician, is you have friends in each city and in each country, and you get to quickly meet and catch up on the latest news. So yeah, those are my answers. If there's any other question, type it in very quickly, and otherwise I wish everybody a nice evening.
Thank you, Professor. I think a lot of good question.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very interesting for your festival in the where the restaurant, right?
In Switzerland, yes.
Restaurant, yeah. So I hope in the future, next year, I hope next year, and we will invite some excellent contestant to join your music festival.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. I very much enjoyed everybody's playing, and I encourage you to apply to our festival and see what happens. I think that would be really, really fun to see your applications. But maybe I can send you the information through Fun.
Okay. And then now I will open all the talking, and all contestants can say thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor, to give a lot of good idea. 好，我现在把大家的声音都打开，然后大家可以说一声谢谢，感谢这个教授跟我们就是这么多的好的建议。Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank
Everybody. Sure. Take care, everybody. You're welcome.
Oh, and okay. See you next time. Thank you, Professor Lorenz.
Sounds good.
See
Take care.
you.
Fun. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.